And so the king asked this question, who would presume to do such a thing? And Esther said, this is verse 6, the adversary and enemy is this wicked Haman. Then Haman was afraid before the king and the queen. He had no answer for that. He's dumbfounded to find out that Esther is a Jewish. He just didn't dream that could be true. And he had a decree to have him put to death, and here's the queen, and she's begged for a life. Well, the king is puzzled. In fact, the matter is, he's got to think this thing through, because this man Haman was his trusted advisor. He was his prime minister. Now notice what happens. And the king, arising from the banquet of wine in his wrath, went into the palace garden. Why did he do that? He went in there to think this thing through. He said, I've got to get this thing straight in my mind. Why, I can't believe that Haman would do such a thing as this. But apparently he's done it. He believed his queen. And here's my queen pleading and begging for her life before me. And because of Haman, well, he has to cool off just a little and think the thing through. And the king, arising from the banquet of wine in his wrath, he went into the palace garden. Now he wants to think clearly about it. And Haman stood up to make request for his life to Esther. And this man, who was so glib in asking that others be put to death, he now becomes just like a slave. He grovels at the feet of the queen. And fact of the matter is, he's mad. This man is mad with fear. For what does he do? Haman stood up to make request for his life to Esther the queen, for he saw there was evil determined against him by the king. He saw that the king wasn't going to let this thing pass. He was going to do something. And what does this man Haman do? Well, he gets down on his knees to plead for his life in a craven way. And he begins to paw at the queen. She was reclining, you see, on the couch there. That's the way they ate in that day. And all of them had been reclining. And now this man, he begins now to paw at the queen. He's mad. He doesn't really know what he's doing. Now notice verse 8. Then the king returned out of the palace garden into the place of the banquet of wine, and Haman was fallen upon the couch where Esther was. He's begging for his life, and she's afraid of him. You can be sure of that. And when the king sees that, then said the king, he forced the queen also before me in the house. What in the world is this man trying to do? There, just pawing at my queen. And he just didn't do that, friends. He's mad. This man, Haman, is just mad at this time. He's lost his mind. As the word went out of the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face. You see, there were these eunuchs standing around. They haven't moved. The queen hasn't called for any help yet. She's frightened, and she's filled with fear. When the king comes in and sees that, he doesn't have to say anything than what he does say. Why, he says, what is this man thinking of? These eunuchs, great big fellas, they step up, and they take this man Haman. And now he's being arrested. What's going to happen to him? Well, we read verse 9. And Harbona, one of the chamberlains in attendance upon the king, said, Behold also the gallows, 50 cubits high, which Haman had made for Mordecai, who had spoken good for the king, standeth in the house of Haman.